actions. Now, John 12:6 says that Judas was a thief. He carried the money for Jesus and the disciples, and he was stealing from it. No, his heart was corrupt. Now, let's just assume for just a moment that he did have good intentions. You and I might prefer that God will judge us by our intentions. But that doesn't even work in man's court before a judge and a jury. We can't explain a traffic violation, for instance, by claiming, I didn't mean to do it. I meant well. No, we have to pay for our offense. Bruce Larson wrote about a friend of his who went for a drive one day with his wife out in the country. They came upon some apple orchards, and they were watching a man picking the apples and filling a bushel basket. The couple stopped and they asked the harvester if they could buy some. Just help yourself, he said. They climbed out of the car, got some paper bags, and filled them with the choicest of apples. When it was time for them to leave, they turned to the man again and they said, "Are you sure we can't pay you?" "Oh no," he said. "I'm stealing them too." Now, if the law or the orchard owner had come along at that point, good intentions would be irrelevant. They were stealing apples. I do not think Judas even had good intentions. John says that he had a corrupt heart. Now, we don't need to identify with Judas. We don't need to try to build a case for him. He is guilty. He is a scandalous traitor. We can't even claim that it was Satan's fault. Now, one more warning before we turn to our passage today. It's this. Jesus was not trapped by Judas. As we read it, I want you to notice how much Jesus was in full charge of everything. Jesus gave mysterious directions, for example, we're going to see here, to Peter and John for knowing where to go and prepare the Passover meal. Why? Well, given the context by which we're about to read this, I believe Jesus was keeping the location a secret from Judas, who had already made a bargain with the religious leaders. Jesus was determined that his arrest would take place at the time that he chose and not before. Peter and John were to enter the city to look for a man carrying a jar of water. Now, something you should probably realize about this. Only women carried jars of water in those days. Men carried water skins. This unusual sight of a man doing woman's work would be a sign. They were to follow that man and say certain words to him, words which are, in effect, passwords. Jesus had pre-planned and carefully arranged it all. He knows his betrayal time is at hand. Judas was looking for a time Jesus would be isolated from the crowds, and being alone with his disciples in that upper room would provide the perfect opportunity. It makes sense to me that Jesus made careful plans so that this important Passover feast would not be interrupted. Jesus was in full charge. Feast would not be interrupted. Jesus was in full charge. Feast would not be interrupted.